Hi and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about a few really cool games that I found during the Steam Next Fest. And with that in mind, it'll be one of those usual videos where we just talk about them. They're not going to be in any specific order or anything like that. It's just going to be games that I found really cool while browsing the Steam Next Fest. And I hope you'll find something that you enjoy within these. As always, all of the links to them will be down in the description, so you can go down there and check and play any of these games. They're all free to check out and play. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Up next is Aurora. Aurora is a 2D side-scroller where you are looking for your mom. You awaken as a cat and you are gonna be looking for your mom. And essentially the background to the game is that a meteor shower has forced most of the world's population to settle underground, and you awaken as a feline who's trying to find her mother. You get a drill that can be used to dig through the ground, which I thought was a fun little mechanic, and you'll be solving a bunch of puzzles and meeting characters and all that. The game describes itself as being dark fantasy. Now, from the demo, I did not get that vibe a whole hell of a lot. To me, it was more cute than anything, but if you look through the Steam screenshots, it definitely does have some dark fantasy there. But in general, it's really fun. There isn't a lot to the demo. There's a puzzle that you can solve inside of a haunted mansion where you find 4 other children. There is a playable little game machine where you can collect items. It's one of those claw machines. And it's really fun, actually. I kind of did end up spending half of my time with the game, specifically playing that machine. And I just kind of enjoy the sort of mini-game progression system. I hope, the one note that I will say is that I hope that going into further development, that there'll be more things that I can use the drill for, as during the demo, there really didn't feel like there was a lot to it, as there wasn't a lot of areas I could dig. During the demo, I also noticed that some of the platforms that disappear when you jump on them and then reappear would disappear just by me touching them, which is, in my opinion, something that I would like to see change. It feels a little bit too punishing, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's just me who's having a major skill issue. In general, this game is really cute. You could get different clothing items to dress up the feline. I managed to make mine dripped out in a good old cowboy hat and sunglasses, and it looked great. And honestly, if somebody tells me that I don't look fancy, I don't know, I'll disagree respectfully, of course. But Aurora is really fun, and I'm genuinely really looking forward to it. I have linked it down in the description, like every other game that we're going to be talking about today. And I think you should go and check out the demo. And otherwise, let's move on to the next one. Mycorelic is a Souls-like co-op game that I decided to play by myself. Mycorelic essentially is a Souls-like where you play as a robot mushroom. Essentially, the idea is that you can swap around your body pieces as you go along. Each body piece, of course, having different stats. These stats, however, in comparison to another Souls game where it might just be +5 to body, instead these will exceed the limit of what you can have in that stat. The beginner limit for some stats are 3, so you might be able to find a torso that allows you to, instead of putting 3 into that stat, you can put 4 attributes into it. And of course, the attributes you will be earning through the usual Souls level system. The one unique thing here when it comes to the level system is how easy it is to respec. You see, there's a plus and a minus sign besides the attribute. You can just click the minus sign and put it into whatever else. There's no items, no downgrade to you or your playstyle needed when you're doing that. So you're allowed to freely swap around and experiment as much as you want. On top of that, the game also has these really interesting ideas for its weapons. You see, the weapons aren't just a stat stick or an ability stick. No, they each have their own perk. And that perk can be, as an example of my favorite weapon that I found in the demo, it was increases the damage of your weapon by 50% if 2 specific stats match each other. So in my case, it was the game's variation of strength and endurance that needed to be like on the same stat, and then if they were, I get 50% more damage. And I think that's a really interesting idea, as it sort of allows for more build crafting stuff. And like I said, this is a co-op Souls-like. It is a Souls-like that is meant to be played with more people, and some perks really do display that. An example of a perk that does that is that there is this staff you can find that essentially allows you to, whenever you've hit a target, you can kill that target and then get a spirit charge, the spirit charge being this game's version of spells. That is something that's super interesting, as the staff itself is like super low. When it hits, it doesn't do a lot of damage, but then when your friend comes around and kills it, then you can both get that charge. It's a really neat little system that they have in place here. I think to encourage solo play a little bit more, at least help with solo play, I would probably just allow there to be a weapon swap thing like you have in Elden Ring and other Souls-likes, where you can swap between 2 weapons easily, as at least within the demo that wasn't really the case. And I think that's a bit of a shame. Other than that, this game game is much slower than your usual Souls-like. It is much less Elden Ring and much more Dark Souls in that sense, where a lot of the bosses move a lot slower, you do a lot less damage, and you just sort of have to dodge around. That's not to say that, of course, in Dark Souls you can do a lot of damage, but in this game you sort of don't do a lot of damage, and it becomes more of a dance between you and the boss. And I find that to be a really interesting idea, because it allows the boss fight to really shine for what it is, and it allows you to get some real good old boss fighting. And I really enjoyed it. I found this game to be really fun. And I think that is really the place where it is. I think if the dev team continues to go in this direction, they'll probably have something entirely unique and special on their hands. Mycorelic is something that I definitely recommend to everybody out here who likes Souls-likes or anything else. And if you're on the fence about it, try the demo on Steam. It's free, and just see if it's something that you'll like. For me, it definitely was. Holstin is a horror game. It is definitely inspired by some of the older Resident Evils and so on. It has this really cool system where when you aim, you go into an almost first-person perspective, otherwise you're seeing it from a top-down perspective. And honestly, it adds a lot to me, at least for me, because I like this perspective where you get a lot more detail on the world. You can also turn the camera in a 360 view using Q and E on mouse and keyboard anyway, and the aiming is honestly fairly smooth. The combat itself is very much also old school survival horror-esque style. You know, you have a set amount of bullets, you can't really just spam and splooge all your ammo at once. You have to time it. There are certain weak points and enemies that deal more damage. Melee is usually, at least with the crowbar, have to be charged up, otherwise you can get melee weapons that don't need that, but the one I got, I ended up breaking on another enemy, and there are a lot of things like that. The game itself has a lot of weird NPCs and all of these typical things that you'd expect in a horror game. It definitely does have a vibe to it, and I would call it my average day in Poland. It is really fun though. I genuinely really enjoy this game, and it's one that I've had on my radar for a long time, just due to the perspective changes and all that. I really like that sort of thing where they play with the meta game of the game itself. I think that's really unique, and I think that's really cool. And Holstin really holds that up a lot. I really enjoy how the game sort of set up, even though it's a simple premise. You have to go and find your friend in this horror site. This entire fucking thing is going on, that there's some infection, there's an experiment that's gone wrong. You know, you don't really hear a lot. It also just kind of flops you directly into it with a woman, you know, joking about committing Alt F4 and all of that. Like, there is a lot of these sort of jokes and that vibe in the game. I love it a lot. I think it's really fun. I so far have enjoyed everything I've played. It is too early yet to say if I really find it scary. I didn't really get jump scared or anything in the demo. I wasn't really tensed up either. But I think that is also because it's the tutorial area, right? Like, of course, they're not gonna pull out the big guns just yet. Anyway, on to the next one. Sunken City is what would happen if you took the idea of parrying and tried to put it into Kingfield or Lunar Acid. It actually plays fairly well. It is not that the parrying feels absolutely necessary, as most of the time I get around combat by just walking backwards, but when it is there, it feels pretty fun. There is a boss fight at some point in the demo against a librarian, as an example, where they'll throw books at you and you can parry back at them to like get a interest to attack. That felt really good. There's also different sort of cases where it becomes necessary with a monster that gives one shot if you parry the attack. Like, there are a few different things like that. However, for the vast majority of cases, it's just outright not necessary, and I think that's a bit of a shame, as I think the mechanic itself is a really good idea. The only thing I really have to say about the entirety of Sunken City negatively is that it can feel a little bit unpolished, a little bit janky, if you may. But that's also about it, and that's honestly kind of impressive. It has a thick atmosphere that I really like. It makes me feel kind of tense the entire time while playing, and that's something that I personally appreciate. I think Sunken City might honestly be one of those games that I'll be getting once it releases, purely just for the similarities to things like Kingfield and Lunar Acid. I also absolutely love the fucking aesthetic of the game. This borderline reminds me of some of like the really old games I used to play. I love the way it looks and all of that. I think it's really cool. I also, when it comes to the entire thing of things I love about this game, like I said, the parry system, what is not necessary, when it's necessary, it's really fun. And if there is one thing I'd recommend to like the developer to add a little bit into it, it would probably be some friendly NPCs, maybe a merchant or something, and some like currency and XP. And like the XP stats just not implemented within the demo, like levels outright, but having that and maybe having some currency be gold or something else, that will probably be about it. Anyway, on to the next one. Up next is Morbid Metal, which is an hack and slash roguelike that I quite frankly enjoyed a lot. It is published by Ubisoft but developed by Screen Juice, and it's pretty fun. It is a game where you play this robot in a simulation type of thing, and I think that's how the lore behind being a roguelike is supposed to sort of come out. But the run that I had was pretty fun. I ended up having abilities that heal me when I killed enemies and for the damage I did, and then I also ended up having an ability where the enemy would do 200% more critical hit damage, but so would I. There are areas in the game that give like an area-wide debuff to you. That can, as an example, be for me that my health is drained every second. But then I could heal myself back up through killing, because that is just the perks I picked up throughout my run. There is also secrets and that sort of thing, and that seemed to be pretty fun to find. There are also some currencies that I don't know what are for that wasn't available in the demo. But overall, Morbid Metal seemed really fun actually. It had some performance issues, and I've read that the UI used to be pretty bad in the sense that it barely was visible. But while I was playing the demo, I had none of those issues, so I think that has been patched by now. It is, needless to say, pretty fun, and something that I'd highly recommend that you check out, at least for the demo, and then get your own opinion on it. And that should, at least to a certain extent, mean something coming from me, as I genuinely dislike most roguelikes. They're just not my genre of games. But this one seems pretty fun. Up next is Aeromachina, which is a 3D platformer. It has a great movement and wonderful combat, along with some really fun dialogue lines. I genuinely really enjoy almost everything about this game. The combat is snappy and fast, the melees feel good, you can go from one target to the other kind of fast, and the dodges in the game can help you with that movement. You do stun-lock almost everything when you start to hit it, so you can almost stun-lock everything into oblivion, and that is fine. It isn't really the main draw of the game. That is by far its movement. The movement in Aeromachina is really fun. There's so much movement text and waits to just speed up that it is literally insane. An example of it is if you use your dodge, then jump, then use your glide, you can go much faster. But you can also just normally jump up and glide. And if you really don't need any of the speed, you can use your double jump once you unlock it to get even more altitude, and then use your glide. And on top of that, if you then do the dash, you jump, you use your glide, and then you use your double jump, you can get the momentum and then get the little bit of extra altitude by the end. It's wonderful, because it gives you so many options to like explore. And that's just a wonderful thing to see in any game, really. And it's one of those things that I really appreciate about Aeromachina. It's wonderful to play, and it honestly just kind of stands up there with some of the best games I've played this Steam Fest. It is really fun, and the movement can be used in a lot of ways, because there are, of course, secrets and stuff that you can find, and some of them will require you to use some of the movement tech. But there are also other uses for it, such as skipping enemies, skipping entire rooms, and genuinely just being really, really fast. And that's just kind of fun. I enjoy the fact that you have the capabilities to do it. While the game never forces it, there's no timer, you can do it. I also really like the dialogue and sort of the characters kind of playing off each other. I think it's really fun, and I think it's kind of witty. I love the visual style. The one thing I do find lacking within the demo is that there's only the military base level, and I hope in the full game that we'll just see more different levels, different looks to it, because quite frankly, even just by the end, I got a little bit tired of the same military areas over and over. But I will admit that if that's it, I would still probably enjoy the game quite a bit. I just kind of want more, you know, more areas, more environments to be in, because the game is really pretty with its retro art style. Up next is Unbeatable. Unbeatables are a series of games actually, which I didn't know, and the current one that we're looking at is technically the sequel to a first game that is set in a universe where music is illegal. You are rebelling against the government, against the state, and are playing music anyway. It is a rhythm-based game that oddly enough reminded me more of Sekiro than anything else I've played recently. It is incredibly fun though. I really like the music in the game, and obviously the main thing that stands out to people, I think, is the art style that has this both sort of cartoony but also anime-ish feel. It's like sort of this combination of Western cartoon-ish style and then the anime inspirations that we all love. I fucking love this game though. Absolutely one of the best things I've played recently, it is completely sold me on the like entire premise of the game. From the writing, to the characters, to the backstories, to the combat system. I love everything this game has. It oozes personality. It almost felt like a summer trip in some places when I was playing the demo, and in other places it felt straight up like a minigame simulator. I fucking love it. It's really, really good. And it is very well worth experiencing if you haven't played the demo. And if you're on the fence about it, if you look at all of this and you think to yourself, maybe this isn't me, give it a try. Like, just play the demo. It's free and all that. I personally didn't think this would be my thing either, but playing it, I can say I actually really like it a lot. And on top of that, I just like the writing. The art style is pretty. And it's actually so good, matter of fact, that it's made me consider going back and playing the first game, which, as far as I can tell, there's at least a free version of on Steam called White Label with a DLC that costs $5. Worth trying out, worth checking out. I love the entire aesthetic, entire story, and entire vibe this game has to offer, and I highly recommend that you go and play the demo for Unbeatables. Tankiro, it is literally just a game where you place a tank that bonks enemies to death. You have the parry mechanics of something like Tankiro, albeit done fairly poorly, but it works. It can feel a little bit janky at times, mainly due to the lack of a lock-on, I think. I think a lock-on would definitely improve the gameplay quite a bit, but I get that it's probably a very tight budget, and a small studio, something like that, a like passion project or something. I really find this game quite fun. That's really what it is. I think it's just a fun concept. The idea of playing as a tank, but instead of doing tank stuff like shooting them, you bonk them to death. I think it's just really fucking hilarious. Now, before we move on to our last game for the night, I do have a clip of Tankiro I want to show you. Is that a little bit... That's too good. What the... What? Not gonna lie, that's what how a game should be played. What the fuck? Next up we have No, I'm Not Human. No, I'm Not Human is essentially a survival horror game that takes the concept of visitors like in the Mandela catalog, where they're these slightly changed to humans, and you gotta look for the signs. That's the entire concept of the game. You basically stay inside the entire game and you just look for the visitors. You'll get visitors and you'll have to either let them come inside or send them out to a certain death. Because you see, outside in this world, the sun has started to heat up so much that it's actually impossible to be outside during the day. So you have to let people in during the night or send them out into certain death. And that is sort of the entire concept of the game. You also can't be alone, because if you're alone, you're an easy target. And it becomes sort of a thing where you gotta spot the odd one out. Almost a sort of find the evil person here. So you gotta give them some tests that they gotta do. One of the tests that I used a lot throughout the demo, and one of the earlier ones that you get, is looking at their teeth. Because if they have clean white teeth, then they are visitors. There are things like that that you have to sort of check for, and it all sort of sets itself into a really interesting position for a horror game I've never really quite seen before, and it's executed really, really well mostly. I like a lot about this game. The atmosphere, the vibe to it, it's all really good. It is all really horrifying, and the art that they have used doesn't help it at all in being less horrifying, both from the people and the visitors and everything else. It is scary shit. It's genuinely kind of horrifying. It's a wonderful game to play, and I really enjoy it. My one complaint with it, at least in the demo, is that when you play the game, it can very quickly become easy to spot who is and who isn't a visitor. The reason being is that the visitors, they change very little over time. So, one person that might be a visitor in one playthrough is probably also gonna be a visitor in the next playthrough. It can be a little bit too easy at that point. Once you've had a few playthroughs in, you've got a few runs of it, then all of a sudden you know exactly who's the visitor and who isn't. I'd like to see some RNG or something there. Just give me some randomization that can allow other people that usually are safe not to be safe to let in for once. And that would sort of be the only real complaint I have about this game. For me, this is gonna be one of those games that I have to check out when it comes out. I fucking love the concept. I love the Mandela catalog and like the idea of these visitors and everything. And I love it here. I think it's executed really, really well here. And I hope it's something that a lot of you will at least take a look at, because it is that unique. Hi all, thanks for making it to the end of another video. I genuinely enjoy making these videos and talking about all of these games, and I hope you have enjoyed watching it. If you did, please check out the games. Links are all in the description like always. And that's about it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.